I'm going to make a quick introduction before I hand over to Dr. Wang. This is esea Contemporary, where the UK's only nonprofit arts center specializing in presenting and platforming artistic practices and artists identified with East and Southeast Asian cultural backgrounds. Today, on the occasion of presenting Dr. Wang's new book that he co-edited with Terry Lam, the title of the book is Negotiating Identities, Language and Migration in Global London, Bridging Borders, Creating Spaces. But first, please allow me to introduce Dr. Cangbai Wang. He's reader in Chinese Studies and the founder and co-director of Homelands, which stands for Hub on Migration, Exile, Languages and Spaces at the University of Westminster, a research center that brings together colleagues across the university and beyond to engage with interdisciplinary research into migration and diaspora in the UK and the global context. His research interests are in the areas of transnational migration, Chinese diaspora, and migration-related museum and cultural heritage studies. So the book today, published by Multilingual Matters, co-edited by Dr. Cangbai Wang and Terry Lam, explores the transnational practices of migrant groups in global London. It reveals the intricate relationships between migrants and the city amidst globalisation, offering a starting point to examine migrants and the city from a comparative perspective by bringing together case studies of diverse migrant communities. What initially really piqued my interest is also this very refreshing method of use languaging as a central concept in the development of an interdisciplinary framework that creates an opportunity to talk across disciplines and engage with key issues concerning migration, cities and language. I also would like to mention that today's event commences our summer program, which is titled From Counter Archives to Activation. Why are we interested in the subject of counter archives? I think it explores a long-term, interest in concerning to the structure of institutional archives. Some of the key questions we're interested in exploring with our communities and contributors include who holds the right to speak, to be documented, to exist not solely as statistics, but as lived human experiences. What influences, supports, and undermines archival strategies and models within our society? What is the meaning of authenticity and subjectivity in this context, as well as can oral history facilitate intertextuality and counter-archiving to evaluate the narratives entrenched within institutional structures? Without further ado, I will hand over the speaker to Dr. Wang, and please enlighten us.
Thank you so much for Xiaowen. Actually, we have met each other for a long time, old friend, and also I admire her research and creative, art work on migration objects of material culture. So thank you very, very much for inviting me and the generous introduction. It's really my great pleasure to come to share my research and new publication with our audience in Manchester. Although the book is about the migrant in London, I think they are very much related. And really great to be able to talk about, discuss this, share the interest on cities, urban space, movement, language, identity. I think it applies to people in different places. So I started with talking about the ideas, general idea behind the project. What motivated us to do this project? Why? And then I talk about the things that make us, different from other research on migration. Because if you look around, there are numerous research publications on migration. Some of them are probably about, policies, laws, and refugees. So we try to look at the issue from a slightly different perspective and focus. And then I talk about introduce some of the individual chapters, particularly 3 chapters, because we are the center of esea community. So we talk about 3 chapters focused on the Chinese in Britain. That's generally how this talk is organized. Of course, I welcome comments questions from the audience afterwards, and then I will have a conversation with Xiaowen before that. So why did we do this project? Of course, one reason is I'm based in city. I'm based in London. I've been working in London for more than 15 years. And before that, I was in Hong Kong and in Beijing, so I'm basically an urban person. So I love cities. I think city is really rich, dynamic, and has a lot of potential. And when it comes to migration, cities, no matter big or small, play a very important role. But strangely, the majority of the publications on migration in Europe, they either focus on one single country or the entire continent or a region, whereas very few actually take city as a focus analysis. So I think this is something we can do, to take city as a major site of research, and especially important. I mean, all cities are important, especially to a city like Manchester, Metropolis, and London as a global city, which is a super diverse urban space. We are attracted by this potential. And London has been a contact zone with a multiple of people, ideas, culture from around the world. So among all the regions in the UK, London has the largest number of immigrants, right? And so in addition to the wide range of country origin, there are diversity in the religious practice and language spoken. And one in three people residents in London are abroad. And there are estimated more than 300 different languages spoken in London, on the street, in the classroom, in the families. So it's a really example of a super diverse urban space. So this is why city, why London. And there are researchers on migrants in London, but usually they look at one single distinct separate migrant communities, like Greece, like Turkish, like Chinese. There are very few, to look at a connection nexus of language, migrant space across different migrant groups. So this is where we want to get to fill the gap, right? So what we're interested in is not only one single migrant groups, but how to bridge the research, make connection between research, existing research, and the upcoming research on separate migrant groups to bring them together and stimulate, intellectual dialogue between people looking into different migrant groups, also between migrant communities and academia and policymakers. So it's like a starting point to cultivate or develop a comparative perspective, and through an interdisciplinary lens. You can see from the titles or heading of the chapters, they're coming from the researchers, the contributors to this volume coming from very diverse disciplinary background. This is challenging how to bring them together, but also is a beauty once it's done. It gives a lot of opportunity and space to think about how to look at this issue in a fresh and different way. So this research is, as Xiaowen mentioned, I'm based in Homeland. Homeland is a research center, University of Westminster, stands for Migration, Exile, Language Spaces. So not all of them, but majority of the contributors are members in various ways associated with Homeland research. So when it was established in 10 years ago, it's based Department of Modern Language Cultures. So we have researchers on Chinese studies, French, Francophone, and Spanish and Arabic communities. Not only on migration, but also on other aspects of social transformation. So this is the foundation of this research center that look at migrant community in different culture and linguistic context, and also in the global context as well. So gradually expand this research scope to other areas through the joining of colleagues from other schools and other colleges, like architecture and cities, arts, and psychology, sociology. So gradually becoming a university-wide interdisciplinary research hub. So we promote theoretically informed and interdisciplinary oriented and the language-based research of migration and diaspora in the global context. I will talk a little bit more about language-based later on. So it's because at the beginning, all people in the group, we teach language. I teach Chinese as well, and air studies. And other colleagues teach French and Spanish. So we all use language as an important part of data collection, and which I think go to the field work, talking to people, archives. I think it's very important. Using the language to really know people and go to about their mental, psychological, cultural aspect of this being. So it's so because we are based in London, so very naturally London become one of the major sites of homeland research. We look at the, very interestingly, the research project and also the PhD students who are working on migration. 2/3 of them actually investigated on migrant in London. So London become like a distinctive feature of our research on migration. So London is one of the sites, but that's the only one. That's not the only one. We also interact with research into other areas such as health and well-being, and we have colleagues working on about factory workers in Malaysia, reproduction health, and also the borders between Italy and North Africa, and U.S. and Mexico. So and the refugees, social integration, young refugees, second generation migrant integration in society, and education, language. A major part of research is applied linguistics, language. And also we have colleagues who are also artists, filmmakers, visual arts, digital, museum heritage. One of my projects is about diaspora Chinese museums set up in different parts of the world to look at how Chinese diaspora, the idea of a homeland, has been represented differently in different parts of the world by different communities. So this got kind of a range of activity we are developing, and so hopefully I can promote something unique, Westminster brand research, and contribute to EDI and sustainable development goals and universal research strategies. So this is about how this book, like output to collect research of the research center. So, okay. So in terms of what make our research different, there are a number of things I think that this differentiate us from other research. First of all, is what is a city? City. So we study migrant in city, but we don't see city just like a background over there. A city is not a container society. City is a nexus of local and global. So city is not a world space. By looking at people in London, we only look at. Actually, we look at how people based in London are connected with other cities, with Manchester, with China, with other places. So it's a contact zone of the locality and the globality. So it's beyond in the transnational space, being here and there simultaneously. So it's also related how we see migrants. So migrants not only referring to people on the move, but also people who are not on the move, but connected one way or the other with people in London. Probably the person is in Beijing, in Shanghai, but they are part of the London migrant landscape because they are related, socially, culturally, economically. This is beyond the container notion of society. And also we don't see city as like abstract entity of just physical, static physical environment. So city is an ongoing set of possibilities. It's a possibility in which the city's meanings and the potential uses are negotiated and released by the activity of migrants. Right? So this is how we see a city beyond container society and beyond abstract physical environment. Also, we try to, as I mentioned before, to look beyond the ethnic lens, to identify the shared issues, opportunities and challenge experienced by all migrant groups, regardless of differences in the ethnic, linguistic, and racial differentiations or affiliations. So we believe that no matter how different they are in terms of language spoken, culture, tradition, or the place of origin, actually when they come to London, encounter with each other, they share the same experience of emplacement, settlement, engage with the place and the space, and the difficulty in the fighting against inequality, and open up a new space for themselves, and also the ways they try to find a means to engage to achieve this purpose. I mean, either through language practice, art performance, or heritage making. There are a lot of commonalities. This is something we need to highlight, to emphasize more. Also, we think that we talk about diversity. Usually, diversity, people assume diversity is adding up of a number of different distinct migrant groups. That is identity. But actually, we think identity come from more from the power differentiations within migrant groups, interactions across different migrant groups, as well as different ways that migrant group is related to the place of settlement. But this is how and why diversity come from. So we try to go beyond this essentialist or Eurocentric view of identity in which migrants, like Chinese, assumed to be a people with, within this group, they share the same identity and associated with a particular mode of, incorporation with place. So this is something we want to, to challenge by doing this research. And naturally, because we have 11 chapters, each one focus on one London-based migrant community. So the purpose of the book is bring them together, bring these new cutting-edge case studies of research of migrant groups in London. Try to, I cannot say has completed that, but the starting point to develop a comparison, the different groups in the same city, the differences and the sameness and differences in this process. So this is the things. Next one is we promote language-based and language-sensitive research as a tool, as I mentioned before, to almost all of the contributors. We use the target language, go to the field, data collection, and which is, I think, crucial for the, we call it the ethnography or ethnographically oriented research. To spend time with, share stories with the community we study over a long period of time, and observation, organizing workshop, interviews, and very crucial generating fresh, in-depth insight into issues, identities, belongings, and inclusion. And also is the idea, the whole book is about, we're not denying the structural inequality, the difficulties, sometimes migrants as victims of the unequal treatment. But we also argue that we need to go to avoid this, seeing migrants from the binary dichotomies between like immigrants and locals, and outsider, insider, and majority, minority, assuming like antagonistic or conflicting relationship between these two. Like the former is become the victim of the latter. So we try to go beyond this dichotomy to look at the agency, the culture, creative agents of migrants. How they can, like bordering. We call it bordering. Negotiating border. Bordering here is not only referring to the physical lines on the map. Bordering is how to interact across different ethnic, culture, and religious categories, and also try to break down or challenge existing discursive categories and power relationship. This is the bordering. Try to play a big role in articulating the identities, empowerment, and a sense of belongings, like together in differences kind of process. So this is the emphasis on the important migrants as an agentive subject, the possibility and the potential that they can make a difference to the reality in a very creative way. Also, we try to argue that all research is not only about city itself, or neither is about migrants and in the city, but actually about the interrelationship, the mutual constitutiveness of migrant and cities. The city is not external to the identities and belongings of migrants in the same way as migrants are not external to the fabric ethos of the city. London as a city, embedded in its own historical past, has unique, connected with global forces and economic political structure. This is unique, and the migrant landscape is embedded, interacted with this, ethos and fabric of London. How they coming together? So, being an urban dweller in the city space, you are contributing to the city development, identity. At the same time, you are constructed by the city. So it's like city making people, people are making city. So we are like urban migrants are urban architects. In the same way as we are architected, we are shaped by the urban space we are living in. So this is what we are interested to look at, this mutual constitutiveness of migrants and cities. So interdisciplinary, this book is, we try to make a case for the usefulness of interdisciplinary research. So the contributors coming from applied linguistics, sociology, arts, visual arts, museum heritage sectors. So how to bring these chapters together is a really challenging task. So we come up with the idea of using language or languaging. So languaging as a useful central framing device to bring them together and to bring research, literature in the area of applied linguistics. There are a lot of linguists, are looking into migrant issues in the area of performance, performativities, and also in the area of critical heritage studies. So language, we see language is more about, is about, we see language not as just a verb, not as a verb, not as a labeled language or structural forms, which also, of course, also important. But here, language to us means action, it means agency, the social practice. So that's why we use languaging. Languaging is more about speaking, the way of speaking. So we look at different ways migrants speak. To themselves, with each other, and to the cities. So we look at different ways of speaking and different ways of communication. So it's more about make a voice, how to articulate their, identity and belonging through practice, through social actions. And so its language is defined in a broad metaphorical sense, referring to various kind of material and immaterial practice that give voices to individuals and communities, enabling them to hear and to be heard and to communicate. So this is, we probably will have time to talk more about language. So it's go beyond its conventional understanding of language as a territorialized, structured. It's a common framework language, European language, Chinese, and whatever. It's language here in London, in the space of mobility, is more fluid, is more diverse. It's embedded in the specific cultural, religious context and depends on the function of the language. So imagine in a supermarket in London, people talking to each other. The customers are maybe a local London white British, and the shopkeeper maybe from Turkey, and the import products from Spain. And there are customers from China, Japan. So the way they talk, they go far beyond the conventional defined, labeled language, right? It's a lot of different kind of new elements coming into play. And also language involved not only practice, but also it's not only about abstract grammar, syntax, words. Language is about impressions. Language is about multisensory, multimodal, practice, right? And performance as well. So it's about how in the urban space, people, migrants coming from around the world, they, resort to whatever resources available in the space, to make meaning, to communicate, right? And so this is why we also use ideal space, So people argue the starting point of starting language is not the grammar. The starting point of starting language is the space, because this is the space. Space is where actually used, So actual language is about meaning making, So so we talk about body language, about the science, performance, colors, text, letters, a lot of typography, all these things all coming together to become part of the language. And so we identify, or the book is organized into 3 sections or 3 spaces, language spaces. So the first one is the metrolingual space. The first 3 chapters is focusing on how the skill of what they call the translanguaging. Translanguaging are used by the, here's the chapters, like the first 3 chapters. Used by the first one is young Italians in the post 2008 Euro crisis, the new wave of immigrants from Italy to London. Most of them are very young, make a living and have a new profession in London. So the way they look at the way, this research focuses on people working in the restaurant, the chefs, in the catering industry, how they use the translanguaging practice, combination of Italian, localized Italian with English, with dialect, to perform their young adulthood and perform their new professional reputation skills acquired through living in London. It's quite interesting, particularly Joe Wang, the concept of translanguaging, proposed by Professor Li Wei in UCL. So he's and other scholars. The second one is about the French. The first year students from French students in London universities look at the way that they construct, they disrupt this hegemonic Frenchness, to gradually embrace a new sense of cosmopolitan identity, London identity through language practice, engage in encounter with different language in the dormitory on campus. Also through the construction of senses, different smell, sound, sense in London. How through this kind of resources they come up with to engage with both the habitats back home and the new habitats in the London as a global city. And the third one is about Alevi Kurdish migrants, particularly practice Alevism, and the particular younger generation, how to develop religious and ethnic identity, like this picture. Because Kurdish is a minority in Turkey, and Alevi is a religious group, is a minority group. So they can double minoritized, double minority, double marginalized group. So they emphasize the importance of community, particularly in the classroom, how to include Alevism as part of religious class, religious education, and to develop a religious ethnic identity and recognized by the British society. And that picture illustrates the physical environment lived by the French students, where they encounter different legal sense, Maya, and languages. And this one is a study based in the shops in Hackney. It's a lot of small business like groceries, restaurants, supermarket, small mini supermarket, ran by people from all over the world. So you can see this is different kind of combination of characters, signs, and colors, and is represent called graphic heritage. It's very important for migrants to feel, although in London, engage with, connected with people found back home through this kind of signs and language about their sense of belonging and placemaking. But another challenge is that this graphic heritage, when it comes to listed heritage or urban regeneration managed by council, they are not considered proper heritage. So they are, the urban regeneration is prioritize the heritage of particular time in history, or particular heritage of a particular class of people. So these are the heritage is disappearing, or at the most considering as a helpful contribution to the heritage, not heritage itself. So this is first, metrolingual space. So you look at metrolingual means based idea of a metro ethnicity. So it's about how the language used by urban dwellers coming from different background or mixed heritage, the interaction using the language used by them. And the second part is a performative space, visualizing, sounding, and acting identities in the transnational field. So there are 4 chapters. Like this one is about Miss Congo beauty pageant, beauty competition organized by the Congolese community in London. It's a part of the performance, the performing of the black beauty. Also, it's a process for them to, most of them are born in the UK. They have never been back to their homeland. So through this kind of performance and practice, they connected with their origin homeland in the post-colonial context. Also, is give the opportunity to discuss and show differences, challenge the traditional idea on gender, family, family roles, and like a encounter with the hegemonic discourse within the community in the context of London. Also we're proud to provide alternative to the idea, sense of beauty, is constructed mostly by the Euro-American kind of aesthetics. So the black beauty, what's the black beauty? But the natural health. So this is a very, very rich, diverse, dynamic process of performance through which they could really define who they are, also have sense of ownership, has ownership of their heritage, and have a better connection with the society. Also, boost the confidence in front of a broader, local audiences. It's a really important, opportunity, act of languaging. So it's also languaging, speaking. And that one is about a family album photos by a Vietnamese refugee family in the UK. And so it's about some memory, object memories, talking about remembering the past through object. Also looking towards future through object as well. But I will talk about later on that aspect. This one is also part of this performative space. It's quite interesting. Is the artist? She's in Korea. He's based in Korea. The artist, and so the project called Assembly. It's a series of installations in the mosque. 3 mosques. This one is Brick Lane, Brick Mosque. Another one is in it's a Southwark. It's an old Kent Road. And the third one is a Harrow. These are adapted mosques because there are no ready mosques for them to use. Very often they use cinemas, whatever, pubs, to adapt it into mosque. And so this is the projection. The installation is a projection of the footage of the congregation, the prayer recorded by a motorized camera, mounted above. So and the footage was projected onto the floor because the camera, the ratio is 1:1, so the footage matched the floor very well. So the carpet disappears on the carpet. So the real practice and the repetition of the practice coming together is a matching of the repetition and the matching of the real site. And this mosque, not this mosque, the old Cannon Road mosque was demolished. It's gone, the space has gone, but because they preserved this installation and they project this installation they're now using a temporary place as a mosque. But they project this image of the old mosque onto the new site. So when people come in to worship, they feel they're still connected with the old one. And it's also not only about preserving the image and the sound, but also preserving the religious structure and the memory. So it's quite powerful, actually. I visited this site, and it's quite powerful. You can see the image there. I think the hands how they are worshiping. So this kind of what performance is a performance, performing, but through the performance they also have a sense of who they are, identity, and empowerment as well. So this one, the third section is about heritage, museum and heritage, collecting, remembering, and transmitting the past for the shared future. So this one is focused on the Indian communities. Look at the memorial gate, memorial site. This one is in the Constitution Hill by the Hyde Park. Another is an official one. Another one is where is it? Is another place. Is an unofficial one. So look at two memorial sites. So not only look at the physicality and materiality of the building, but look at the activity taking place around the building. Because over the years, different people from different groups of the Indian community, of different generations, men and women come together to remember the past. So sometimes it's not particularly on the sacrifice in the war. It's more about the collective history and memory. So it's very interesting. And this one is about the Colombian women in London, or the Latinos. It's reflecting on the experience in the armed conflict in Colombia. And the women are the victims of maybe suffer most in the conflict. But usually, if you look at the official museum exhibition about conflict, it's all about the power of man, and so it's to give them away using this interactive art kits. It's like a very little cardboard and crayons, so they can create a museum for me. The project a museum for me. So like in this room, each one have a set of these tools and a kit, and you can create a museum by yourself. Decide whatever to display, like whatever to put inside. So it's a make, and then they display this completed mini museum, museum for me in the public space, and also alongside the official representation of women and migration, etc. So this one is focusing on Chinatown. So look at the particularly food heritage, the idea of authenticity, and so I will have time to talk more about later. So this is I focus on 3 chapters on the Chinese Britain. On the Chinese Britain, briefly, if we still have time. The first one is about the subjectivities of British Chinese women through art and the material object. So the challenge reductive stereotype surrounding the British Chinese women, mostly from Hong Kong, from the New Territory area, Hong Kong, and they are kind of the bride migrants. So they don't know their husband. They came here, and most of them are not very, basic education, from the rural area. They came to the UK for marriage, and now they are in the retired age. So they are considered, Chinese immigrants are considered silent, quiet, and the women particularly have no voices. So try to give if you engage with the ordinary, interviews, talking to them, they are, they don't really, they are frightened. Yeah. I don't know how to talk about academic. I don't know how to structure story. So the best way, another way used by the artist, the author, is use this visual ethnography. Instead of asking them to tell stories, she organized a series of art workshops, right, to make artworks, collage, art writing, and art writing, and experimental art writing, and other things. So through this way to collect, visual data, visual materials, and make analysis based on these visually articulated texts. So artwork offers an alternative way of telling stories and express feelings through their creative practice, acting as a creative and subversive strategy to disrupt the revised relationship, power, and representations. And interestingly, when the artwork, like this, they don't want to talk about what you're talking about, the hardship or challenges in the real life. So instead they focus on the positivities, looking forward, forward-looking attitude. So this one is about a glamorous wedding created collectively by the participants, the Hong Kong women. So probably they themselves, have a lot of challenge, difficulty in their marriage, but by creating this very bright, optimistic, glamorous picture collage, plenty of food, luxury cars, smiling, champagnes. So really big positivity for the future. And this one are very similar looking the call is called 10 stones into diamonds. So at the bottom, representing the dark colors, stones, reality, but going up is the stone exploded into colorful jewelries, diamonds, projecting optimistic and confidence towards the future. So this is I also have a chapter is focused on the Chinese New Year celebration. Unfortunately, I plan to observe the real celebration because of the COVID. So it's basically, of course, I visited the celebration many times, but informally. And this one is based on the virtual celebration, the year of the New Year, Ox. And so it's about, I think it's very important examples of heritage making by Chinese migrants in the UK and in London. And so the starting point is asking the question, so what is heritage, whose heritage? This is art by Dora Ho, more than 20 years ago. So it's about ownership, interpretation of heritage. So she asked for a critical examination of British heritage from the multicultural perspective, and in more inclusive manner, to redefine heritage by, in his word, to writing the margin into the center, right? The outside to the inside. So this is a starting point, and I think it's a groundbreaking. Of course, very important. But now I'm arguing that it's not only adequate to look at within its nation-state framework of margin and center. So because migrants are, situated in a transnational context, they are connected, related simultaneously with more than one center, right? 2 centers or 3 centers. So they are double marginal, not only one marginal, double marginality. So that's why it's important if you want to understand the heritage making Chinese New Year as an act of heritage making. You need to look at not only how the Chinese Britain engage with the localized cultural heritage, like multiculturalism, but also to engage with the heritage discourse in China, like the rise of China, global China, right? And the heritage museum is booming in China. The Chinese comes to a lot of time, built numerous, more than 6,000 museums in China. And to represent Chinese culture tradition, not only inside China, but globally. So the organizer of this event smartly, strategically engage with these two different heritage discourses. We call global heritage discourse. It's a new analytical framework of investigating the heritage making of Chinese in Britain as in the global transnational context. And also, I identify this strategy is called double heritageization. So it's a process of use of strategy of blending and authentication. Blending is like fitting in, try to show, to perform the process fitting in the local mainstream culture, mainstreaming, while still keeping their culture characters. And second one is authenticating, like they are. So the blending is like making the global Chinese local. Authenticating is making local global. So authenticating is through the stage performance, the act, to showing the lingering on of migrants, no matter how much they have integrated on their original or traditional culture elements and traditions. So this is simultaneous dual process, we call double heritization process. So what I want to emphasize is that the Chinese communities, at least the business elite, because they are from the business community, at least the business, they are constructive marginals. So we differentiate two different ideas. One is marginal as a victim are associated with isolation, and another one is marginal is constructive marginal who come on new space to construct desirable identities. But agency, of course, is also imbricated in the global local dynamic, shaped by shifting political and economic relations within and between nation state. Because the research conducted 2 years ago, so the golden period between China and Britain had gone. So to what extent this broader political kind of effect on the heritage making process is a way to be seen. But at least based on this year's observation, is probably more or less the same. The process keep on going. These are just some photos of the gathering is 2 years ago in Trafalgar Square, the first time after the pandemic. So it's also it's a Chinese or spring or Lunar New Year celebration, but you can look at the audience. They come from diverse communities. I chatted with people around me. They from France and Germany, from Malaysia, so from different countries in the background. So this one illustrates the process of blending. Blending in different ways. Usually they stage artists with a mixed heritage, British Chinese. So this is symbolizes a successful story of the organizer becoming recognized, OBE recognized by the royal family. So another picture illustrates the process of authenticating. That every year invite the quite famous artists from China, delegation artists, organized, dispatched by the Chinese government through two major cultural projects. One is called Culture China Spring Festival, 四海同春, right? The other one is called Happy Chinese New Year. So they perform this cultural performance together with local artists. So this kind of authenticating. Not so much about, I think they know so much what they perform is the act of performing itself. Briefly, the third one is a case study is about London Chinatown as an inclusive, diverse, and multicultural urban space. So we talk about Chinatown, we usually think about Chinatown, okay, it's Chinese heritage, but actually it also try to argue that Chinatown heritage is not the same as Chinese heritage. So Chinatown as urban space, multi-urban space, more, multi-layered and diverse and inclusive. So it unpacks the nuances in people's understanding of meaning food by identifying 3 types of everyday food heritage. So 3 of the first heritage, food heritage, is everyday operation as heritage. So heritage is not really about the food itself. It's about the operation, the materialized, meaning-making process performed in the space of restaurant, associated with the skills of, I'll show you a picture later on, associated with adaptation, diversification, innovation. Second one is heritage is about social connections, how people meet up in the space Chinatown, friendship. Also people, with the Chinatown as children, want to grow up and have a connection, emotional, social connection with this space. So this emphasizes meaning making, embodied meaning making as a central to this everyday food heritage. The third one is everyday encounter. It's about heritage or non-heritage. It's about occasional visitors, like Chinese, newly arrived Chinese students. So when asked, do you think the Chinese food in Chinatown heritage? They think, oh, this Chinese food is good, but I don't think they're heritage, because if you open the same restaurant in Chengdu, it cannot last for 2 months. So it's talking about authenticity, taste of food. So it's just a different kind of criteria evaluation of heritage. So what really matters for a thing is considered a heritage. Is it a taste, is it a connection, or is it a creation? So indicating the diversification of meaning-making process in Chinatown, shaped by multiple factors, including ethnicity, age, socioeconomic status, trajectories, and personal histories and contemporary needs and concerns. So basically argue for the homogeneous narrative need to be replaced with the anti-essentialist, decentered, plural, complex, multi-layered narratives, which can do justice to the culture complexity of Chinatown. Okay, these are 3 pictures. These are quite interesting. The everyday operation, negotiating authenticity, adapted. These are based on the transcript. So this restaurant is opened by a lady called Eva from Malaysia. So the competition is designed to non-Chinese customers. For example, this satay, mi hong, like mi fen, the rice or micheli. We add satay sauce with prawns, squid, fish cake, bean sprout. In fact, I created a simplified version. So because already sells all these sauce, satay chickens will use same sauce. So it's different. It's slightly different from the original Malaysian cuisine, but it works. And use this. It has to adapt. It must adapt. Actually, it works. And this one is a young generation local Chinese chef. So it's like char siu bao, it's sweet, like sweet and pork, but used the Italian cured bacon. So it's less sweet. It's salty, but it tastes good, right? And so he asked you that I believe in Chinatown, owners, younger generation like me, trying to reinvent Chinese food, make things anything traditional, authentic, in my opinion, brings the Chinese food is borderless. So it's full of innovation. So he's actually claiming that this is authentic as well, right? And the third one is like diversification. Restaurant owner from Sichuan. So creative Sichuan. For many diners in Britain, Chinese food means Cantonese food. So we want to be the game changer, want to educate the whole world to learn more about Chinese food culture around us. The stock exchange listed company. So it's a challenge, diversification. So you see a lot of the heritage process is quite, it's not about results, end results, or authenticity as essentialist fixed. One, actually, it is more about becoming authentic. Involves a lot of different cultural practices by people from different backgrounds, different generations, different genders. To illustrate the diversity and a fluidity of culture represented in the space of Chinatown. Finally, we argue that these language spaces illustrated by the case studies, they are new spaces. They are no real place. Although the making of the language spaces, the speaking, the actual speaking of the language cannot be separated from real space, like a restaurant or dormitory or platform or the square urban center. But actually, they are the outside of real place. So they are different kind of heterotopias in action, especially the juxtaposition of seemingly discontinuous and incompatible objects. Think about Chinese New Year. All of a sudden things disconnected come together in the same time space. Belonging and worldviews brought by different people in the urban space of London temporarily they make it possible for migrants to remember and reinterpret their past critically. The construction of shared future contributing cities involving collective memory scape. So it's more about a space of differences, space of urban space of differences, space of negotiation, in which diverse discourse, experience, pursuits are brought together by migrants as adjective subject and represented, contested, also reversed, creating a moment of becoming and changing. So this kind of heterotopia space undermines the hegemonic language of ethnicity, race, citizenship imposed from above and destroy the syntax with which the authorized discourse holds things together. So just make it possible to have a new language, to speak in a new way, and for the make migrants feel supported and empowered and for positive change towards the future. This is a fact phenomenon. Just briefly, I try to relate it to your center. So the case studies show the importance of art because we are now in the world of age of globalization. So the traditional idea like a society, a nation, become like outdated, problematic. And so the rapid transformation on global scale has brought about questions about the cultural identities, belongings, memories, emotions, demanding new interpretations. So the change, new questions call for new solutions, new responses. And we believe art, as some of the artists research has used in research, is powerful, is effective. Art, the humanity, offer creativity essential intellectual ground for generating fresh critical insight. Tackle this challenge. So this is the use is the important significance of arts communities. Not only by providing insight into not only London-based but any urban migration acting in urban space and in different cities. Okay, I hope you enjoyed it.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Thank you so much. Yeah. That was
maybe I'm poor timekeeping. I don't know if you will run out of time.
Yeah, please join us and have a seat. That was a lot. Very rich content. We do also have the books. After this conversation, we're going to have together. If you want to just hold the book in your hand and look through those chapters, and there are also further illustrations and graphics and visual materials. So I suppose that, if I may, a few questions, I feel like it's bursting out of me. First of all, if I may just a quick comment from what we just learned here. Of course, this is, Visual Arts Center. We primarily work with artists, curators, but also, thinkers, scholars, researchers, because I think more and more recently we've noticed the importance and the necessity, to engage in those interdisciplinary, approaches and practices, because the world has become increasingly complex, isn't it? I feel it's actually a really wonderful occasion to welcome this presentation and the conversation about the book in Manchester, because Manchester is home to one of the largest Asian communities in the UK and Europe. 20.5% of the population here identify with Asian heritage. And of course it's a very mixed heritage. It's not simply Chinese or Malaysian or Indonesia. Very often it's very mixed and cross generation as well. And of course Manchester has a very a large international student community, and I think a few of our audience members here are currently international students or used to be. So personally, I just feel really inspired by the idea of languaging, as method, as a framework, analytical framework, as well as activation. I feel it really touches upon some of the key ideas we hope to explore through our summer program about intertextuality, also mobility and context. We also feel very liberating, to see in this academic approach. And I just wonder if you could comment a bit more on how this idea, came into light. Was there any reservation or even maybe a question about how do we legitimize this, because it seems to be quite new?
Thanks for the question. You can see from the title, language is a very important part of the subject of research. So, and my co-editor he's a linguist. So. And also we have a number of colleagues in the school who are studied applied linguistics. And so although I myself is not a linguist, but I kind of learn from them, inform their research, because they also look at the language linguistic repertoire in the global London, and how creatively people use code switching and different ways of communication. It's quite refreshing. So I look deeper, wider into the literature of applied linguistics. And you can see a shift from seeing language as structured and territorialized, restricted kind of labeled language, moving away from this, which emphasized more on about fixity, structure, patterns, forms. Of course, we all study language, know it's important to study grammar, syntax and vocabularies. But now people move away from this, emphasizing on structure, form, to language as a practice. As practice, moving around, moving across different language categories, and also using. So it's more fluid. It's cutting across boundaries and the categories. So this is if you look at the research on migration, is make it necessary to engage with something already happening there, which is a new ways of communication. New ways of communication is a call for understanding beyond this traditional structuralist understanding of language. Otherwise, we cannot understand it. So this is the starting point of languaging and also you can see language now is more about not the structure. It's not only about structure. It's about the practice. It's about action. And it's about engaging with communication, doing and changing and emerging and becoming. So this process, and also, as I mentioned briefly, is people talking about the language space, not only language but the language space, how language was actually engaged with by people from different backgrounds, using different new terms, new grammars, new expressions, which didn't exist in the territorialized French or German or Chinese, new kind of way of communication devices, and to produce meanings. And also how the language used cannot be understood without looking at how languaging is associated, embedded with this very tangible, specific context. We family, like one research by Li Wei is look at the second generation Chinese children of Chinese immigrants in London, how they communicate with each other. They use a language which has Cantonese, English, Mandarin. So it's a completely like a third language or fourth language. So come up with this kind of new, or called the matrilingual or matrilingual. It's a matro ethnicity. It's beyond, Chinese or Japanese or Korean. It's a new kind of mixed cultural practice and identification as a result of engaging with the urban space or the urban culture, religious, linguistic fabric of the urban space. And another thing is language is, again, is not only about written words or, it's about gaze, gesture, body performance. So it's a sensory experience, food making, tasting, sharing. It's all kind of becoming part of the language. So I think basically the definition of language is becoming more fluid and diverse, to move away from structure to behavior to practice. So this is why I use languaging. So the book is not about the research of individual language used by migrants, but is about making a voice, right? So in this case, the Miss Congo beauty pageant is a language, is a way of speaking, celebrating Chinese or Lunar New Year in the Trafalgar Square is a way of speaking, is a language, right? And food heritage, the creating new food and selling new kind of idea of authenticity and a connection or remembering the past, looking forward through the art creation, object is kind of way of speaking. So try to using languaging as a device to bring different ways of speaking together. So this is basically the idea behind this framework.
Thank you. That was tremendous. I really resonate a lot with the part about language as a form of expression, and then extends to gestures, as you said, gaze, posture, proximity, also positioning, movements, mobility,
yes.
like body movements, right? We very recently in this very space hosted a movement workshop led by our artist in residence, young Natalie Meek. And it was very eye-opening to me because it was a group of incredibly diverse participants in terms of cultural backgrounds, in terms of age, practice, profession, and everyone was moving, very freely. But of course it was a guided, journey, so it's from more limited kind of exploration, and at the end everyone felt so liberated and also collaborative as well. And even though throughout the workshop participants they rarely spoke to each other, but it was a very authentic and also intimate way, of languaging together. There's another question I wanted to ask because it kind of struck me when I read the foreword of the book. It was like part of the conclusion which says, through this book we don't claim representativeness. I thought that was such a crucial, statement because I feel like very much your method is also about finding the nuanced balance between openness and specificity, right? And also allowing the idea of becoming, and then because it's so relevant to what we do here, of course our mission is about platforming East and Southeast Asian, contemporary art practices, but just as in our name, you would notice that we don't use the capital letter ESEA, on the contrary, we very intentionally choose the lowercase ESEA because we also don't want to claim, this representativeness. We're much more interested in content and space and authentic exchange-driven type of discourse, and also allowing space for alternative interpretation. So I just wonder if you would like to comment a bit more on that.
Yeah, we this a number of case studies. So although it has 12, 11 studies of different migrant groups, there are much more than that. We cannot claim it represents all the experience of all migrant groups in London. We try to select case from different culture, background, locations. But so the thing is not about claiming for representativeness. We are actually more interested in trying to look at like a typology. It's a typology. It's an idea. Is rather than claiming a full representatives of all the experience of migrant groups. And representation is about how meanings are articulated in specific set of words and language and symbols. And I think the book is emphasized on practice, not representation. So, but related to the idea of language. So, languaging is informed by the practice is a theory of practice, right? So, it is about is not what or how your identity are represented one-to-one in this particular book or picture, but actually how by doing language through this embodied social, cultural, political practice, you're becoming who you are, right? So your sense of self and subjectivity is becoming lived up, become live, become embodied, impressed through this way of doing things rather than through a specific representation. So there's a difference between representation and the practice. So we try to claim that illustrate the importance of practice, language as a practice as well. But in terms of, although this is, we only identify 3 language spaces, I believe there are more. So this is not exhaustive list of language spaces. It's not exhaustive list of migrant case studies. But I think how to balance these two, individual case and the relevance implications to a broader scale. I think it's about how deep we go into the case studies. If we go deep enough, I think they can be, have a larger implication relevance to the experience of other migrant groups, such as in the book. No matter it's the Congolese or Chinese or Italians, issues like gender relationship, like heritage authenticity, some like authenticity, and power relation within these things, no matter which community you are associated, it speaks to everyone, right? So to me, I think the good case study is that you really go beyond surface, go beyond surface to engage with theories. Theories is really, it's difficult, but it's really useful, beautiful thing, because it helps you to get connected with, with thinkings, with thoughts, and creativity far beyond the empirical surfaces. But at the same time, you are back up, informed by the empirical experience. So if you look deeper and more critically to touch upon some core ideas, core element, I think in a way it's representative because people can feel connected to it.
Yeah, it's very much this interconnectedness we hope to achieve throughout many of our programs and projects. If I may ask one more question, it's about artists and communities. Because we are a community-oriented visual arts center. I would say the majority of the artists we work with, they care deeply about either specific or diverse communities. From a I think a scholar's point of view, because in this book there are several community-oriented, artist projects as well. How would you measure the success of those projects? It doesn't need to be purely from like artistic or aesthetic point of view, but how would you evaluate when artists are working directly with communities?
Artist or researcher? Artist.
Yeah.
Of course, the differentiation, the difference between artists and a researcher is artificial. Artist can be a researcher. Researcher can be an artist. I think it's quite. Personally, I'm quite interested in the collaboration between the researcher and the artist and the community, member communities. It's really about methodology. We sometimes get used to the traditional methodologies, which are useful, like interviews, but how you can stand out from the research on migration by using something different, new methodology, new way of I think you were thinking, like this art installation I mentioned in the British Mosque. With all this art installation, it's difficult to touch upon some of the issues that can only be articulated through the perspective of performance. The relationship between body and emotion, and the structure, and also the idea of the identity is performed. It's not something natural. It's made, it's shaped, it's produced, it's performed. So this gives quite a powerful vehicle or perspective to look at these things. And also people use like participatory theater, inviting migrants to come together to perform, like something similar to you mentioned, to tell a story, in a collaborative way. And also I know there are some like elephant in the castle, Latin elephant. I'm looking at moving from this city to neighborhood, different neighborhoods like Latino, Brick Lane, the Muslims and the Chinese communities using these walking tours, community-led walking tours. So people get involved, talking with the member community about the city, urban space, your living experience, your family and play space. So if you get a photographer involved, you get a filmmaker involved to filming, shooting, and put up installations and films, and it's a nice collaboration between academics and artists. I think this may be the first step, but it's very promising and already signs of success, I think. And it's more not only about publication. Of course, publication is important, but it's about, we talk about impact, research impact, knowledge exchange, really to exchange knowledge, understanding between artists and researcher, between artists, researcher, and member communities, and sometimes policymakers, right? So I think this is something I really enjoy doing. I would like to work on it more, right?
Thank you so much. Now I would like to open to the floor. Is there any question from our audience? Peter, of course.
I have so many questions, but I'll try to do just one. Thank you for a really thought-provoking talk. I agree with you that by choosing to study different migrant groups in one edited volume, it sort of naturally allows you to focus on the commonalities of the migrant experience. But I was also struck by the centrality of the idea of how migrant groups are doubly marginal. They're both marginal in their relationship with host communities, so with local Britons, but then also with their homelands. And as I thought through that idea, it made me realize that provides a really interesting lens through which to think about differences between the experiences of different migrant communities. So if we take your chapter here on Chinese, and we juxtapose it with the Congolese chapter, you show the picture of the women in the beauty pageant, it strikes me that on both of those marginal sort of bilateral relationships, they're very, very different. So for example, in terms of host country attitudes towards migrants, my understanding is the core British idea is BAME, which puts blacks at the center. And in a way, the A is an afterthought, it's silenced. Asians are not really visible when it comes to representations of minorities on British television, British commercials, where blacks are everywhere. So that's very different between, say, Congolese and British Chinese. But then when it comes to host country relations, also massively different. Can we think of another migrant community whose host country is so involved in their affairs that you end up calling this the Chinese New Year? And you talk about the massive role of funding from the government so that other voices within ethnic Chinese communities like Taiwanese New Year's or Hong Kongers become silenced. or even thinking recently about the controversy with the British Museum where they tweeted about Korean New Year and how, you know, Chinese students ended up. Yeah. So anyway, it's interesting, you know, given that you've done this hard work of pulling together these different groups into one volume, it seems to me there's a lot interesting that could be pulled out in terms of, you know, differences between the groups' experiences.
Definitely, yes. Thank you for the comments and the questions. It's definitely, that's why I think it's important to look at city, urban space, not as a bounded, static being. It's like it's a nexus of global forces and local politics as well. So the city is made by both simultaneously and by the interaction between these two. And this can apply to all the case studies, like the Chinese New Year celebration. It's a big role played by the central Chinese government, you know, and in terms of funding, in terms of support, and also the ability to silence other groups, and the skills employed by the organizers themselves to make best use of these resources. It doesn't mean they are pro-communist or they are not against, I guess, but it's not really about political affiliations. It's about being a diaspora, how you tap into whatever resource available for your own benefit, interest, and also to make best use of the discourse of the multilingual culture. You know, or London as a cosmopolitan city is a branding, city branding. That's why Mayor London funded as well. You know? So without the funding from Mayor London, without funding support from the Chinese embassy, Chinese government, it won't happen, right? And the way it happened, right? So now we are talking about people talking about is it Chinese New Year or Lunar New Year or Asian New Year? So it's quite more and more controversial. And with coming the NGO, BNO passport holders from Hong Kong, so one of our colleagues started following up these BNOs, and it's quite interesting. I'm personally interested in the group of Chinese new stream of Chinese immigrants, reluctant immigrants, or whatever immigrants. So it's becoming very complicated, sophisticated picture, and that's why migrants, have full understanding. Has to look at not only here, but there, and how they interact with each other, and like the double marginals. Now, they are double marginals, but they are not always victims. They are making use of the marginality for their own purposes. That's why I call it creative marginals. But not everyone is successful. But at least the organizer of the Chinese celebration, they are successful. You know, they have the economic power and the social, networking with. They're from new territorial, long history with the Canton, and associated with the Dongjiang Zhongdui, the anti-Japanese army. So it's quite historical reasons as well, and also the new territory, the Xiangzhengju, this council has very powerful supporting them. So there's a lot of historical reasons. So not every community has that, right? And so the Congolese, the support from the host country is very, very minor, right? They are neglectable, and the way they use resources they are also double marginals, but the way the resource available, the way they use it is very, very different from the Chinese ways. And it's also the museum for me, the Latin American Colombia women, the way they engage with the museum heritage practice is deeply infected by their experience in the war, in the conflict back home. So without this is all subject matter of this museum representation. They're talking about women, how women, mother, daughter suffered as the victims in the war, which was not reflected in the official exhibition in the Colombia, right? And it's a politicized, mono, kind of voice. So this is the heritage or community exercise, even the motivation is informed, motivated by what happened home and take place here, right? And another example is the Kurdish, Kurdish Alawi Kurdish second generation. The researcher is based in my university. He started with studying the high suicide rate of the young people among the Kurdish people, because they are they're included by their home country, as the Kurdish, and they are Alawi. Alawi is is worse than like a minority Muslim in China. They are considered excluded as well, So they are double marginal, double victims. So they feel no future, not recognized. And without this kind of classroom education, community engagement initiative is closely tied with the politics in Turkey. And in the history of immigration of this Alawi Kurdish community in the UK. So we have to look at, so this is a framework. We have to look at both of different areas. But when it comes to relatively specific case studies, we have to really rely on an individual researcher who has linguistic ability, who has the scientific, academic sensitivity, and ability to dig out, to explore these kind of sophistication within these case studies. So this is like a balance between these case studies and engagement in the bigger picture. So hopefully, this is a book, a small book. We cannot cover all the questions. Hopefully, it can give a sense of this approach that I want to illustrate. Yeah.
Great. Yeah. So I was going to say we have time for possibly one question, but I do see two hands. So let's open up for two questions. No, please. Yes.
Okay. I have a question. Congratulations on you achieved very interesting succeed in the migration subject. As one of the migrant. And I'm this interesting subject for me. And for the community, Chinese community, actually, you mentioned only it's called Cantonese speaking community, not the Mandarin community speaking. The Mandarin speaking community yet. And I'm wondering if you have some impact about the country's migration impact country. For example, for me, I make some impact to China, my Chinese community. And also I make some impact to the UK community, because I make some contribution or something like that to the UK. And so I was wondering if you have or make some comment on that.
Yes. Thank you for the question. I'm Mandarin speaker. I'm one member of the Mandarin speaking community. Although I maybe focus on the Cantonese speaking migrant from Hong Kong, but actually, if you look at people participated in this celebration, they come from across different linguistic groups, right? Not only from Hong Kong. And also the Chinatown, the case study of Chinatown, we talk about Chinatown as not only as a place, Chinatown like a spatial temporal events. Chinatown is not fixed in one particular time. Chinatown is a process of becoming, right? So in the 1970s, 70s, 60s, it's dominated by people from the territorial Hong Kong, right? But in the 70s, we can see people from Malaysia, Singapore, right? And other part of the world. And in the 80s, the new influx of people from mainland China, and new millennium, younger generation, middle class from urban Beijing, Shanghai. So it's a process of accumulated history. So it's not only Cantonese, but also involving diverse linguistic associations. So this is why it is difficult or even problematic to say there is a one Chinese community, right? I try to avoid saying that. Or sometimes community is plural form, because how to define community is really difficult or impossible. So there are community within communities. So it's a fragmented. You look at the Chinese, Chinese speaking world. It's not only Chinese speaking, but Chinese diaspora is fragmented, divided by different language spoken, and religion, political affiliation, other things, dialects, and so it's a fluid and dynamic. So we're talking about there are researchers focusing more on the more recent immigrants from China. Definitely, also in the research Chinatown, we talk about heritage as connectives, heritage as encounter, encounter. I think the research based on interview with Chinese students. So the way they see Chinatown not as authentic enough. So it's based on research with people from different parts of the migrant community. And the second one is they I think is about related to the first one is about migrants is as a transnational being, right? So it's connected simultaneously with different time and spaces. So it's hard to say where is home, where is a host, right? But the home and host is used as a descriptive term, not as a qualitative defined term. It's about so you don't use the home, where's home? We use sometimes people use sending, receiving, or it's about multiple, emplacement, or engage with different places with different community at the same time. So this is the how to say, it's the uniqueness of migrants. It is the special feature and the beauty of being a migrant as well, and it's shared by people from all migrant groups in terms of fluidity. Yeah, you're connected with, but I think what you mean is varied by generations. Maybe, I don't know, maybe you're first generation immigrants, so you're still strong attachment to your hometown, I am as well. But if you look at my son, look at your son, your grandson, they're probably, different, right? So the way that you're connected with place is changing by generation. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I think Claire also had a question.
Yeah, thank you so much for the talk. It's really fascinating. I think migration informs the fabric of many of us and the society as well. So when you went through the chapters across the book, I was really interested in the relational aspect between the researchers and their research topics and subjects. So, for example, your research is on Chinese women in London, and you are from a similar cultural background, and you also speak the language. So I don't know whether your kind of background is also explored in the chapter, and also whether and how other authors in other chapters explore their own kind of autobiographical connection to their topics, and if they are not, personally related to the topic that they're exploring, how do they negotiate the linguistic and cultural kind of barriers, if you like?
Yeah, thanks for the question. I think it varies. Some research contributors, they are coming from that particular community. Like the Chinese women, the starting point of her research is come from the wardrobe, the pajama, her mom's pajama. And her mom is a bride migrant. So she observed the pajama is always, preserved by her more carefully in the wardrobe. And where it come from, how it relate to your life, your story. So starting from asking mom for tell the story of her coming from Hong Kong to the UK, settle down, have children, have a family. So, and this is the way that the personal story is connected with the story of the research subject. But even so, she still needs to overcome the language barrier, because growing up in UK, she speaks broken Cantonese. She has to go to class to study Cantonese to evening class to pick up. she only can speak very simple, like eating and sleeping, like very everyday language. But it comes to asking questions, discussions. It's not has that kind of competence. So this also has involved is negotiating with language barriers. And so this is one example. Some researchers, like the British mosque, the artist actually she's a British lady. She's not from that Nigerian community. She doesn't speak the language, but she worked with a filmmaker. That guy, he's also British. They don't speak language, but they worked with the community. So they worked with community and get support from the congregation. Otherwise, they are not allowed. Imagine, they must, after long, negotiation, obtaining the trust, order to give the opportunity to filming as a British wife inside the mosque. Right? So this definitely involved this how to say communication and bonding. Establishing these trust and the connections with each other across language, linguistic, religious boundaries. So this is I think is challenging process, but it's probably inevitable and is necessary, and I think it's rewarding. It's rewarding as well. When you come to the result of the research based on this negotiation, it has an impact. If you just look from outside on the surface, you can do research very quickly, but when it comes to impact, it's limited. Right? So I would say this negotiation is both a challenge and opportunities. And people, I think the question about the positionality of researchers. Some people are from the community, some from outside, some from in between. Like I'm in between because I'm from mainland China. I'm educated in Beijing, and I speak spoken Cantonese. I work in Hong Kong for a couple of years, and but not fluent. So, and I have some understanding of people in Hong Kong. So it's not the organization, the organizer, the China, London Chinatown Association. I'm not a member of it, but so I'm like in between positions, right? And the Kurdish, I think he is a co-member of this group. But it varies, and it's really asking questions. I think good questions about your personality. But one researcher, he is a researcher, but he always works with a cultural institute. It's like you're working for your institute. You have a different mission, apart from university missions. So how do you negotiate these two missions and the purposes? So it's difficult, it's challenging. And autoethnography is some people also try to incorporate autoethnography into. My students are quite asking me this question: how can I incorporate? It's not a conventional thesis, right? How to integrate your storytelling about the self as part of analysis. So I don't have an absolute answer to it. I think it's something interesting. Also, I have a PhD students who like a practice-based. So the output is a film. It's film based on research. The film is about the South Nanyang, Southern Asian, Malaysia, Singapore, South Asia. So it's about the image of Southeast Asia. Nanyang is represented in film through smile, through colors, in landscape of fruit. So the product output will be a film, but informed by theory. So we have different kind of research. This is maybe research in Westminster is slightly different from Manchester, the central China studies, where at the margin. So we try to embrace different kind of methodologies to make it fresh and interesting, experimental. For students, for me as well, as a supervisor, it's quite challenging. I had to figure out the best solution to this kind of new way of research and new way of output. Yeah.
fantastic. Thank you so much. That was so generous. So I know that maybe some audience members have additional questions. Let's maybe socialize a bit, get some drink, refreshment. I'm still going to be here for a bit. I think Cangbai also will probably still be here for a little while. And please feel free to look at the book over there if you're interested in purchasing them. We do have 5 copies available to purchase. As I mentioned, this is the first event of our summer program. We'll be announcing the full program in a couple of weeks very soon. So stay in touch with us through social media, newsletter. There's also a QR code at the back of your paper, not my paper. If you're interested in giving some feedback about this event, what you enjoyed, what you think could improve in the future, that would be much appreciated. So thank you so much. And please join me. Thank you.